Hi, you're with Julian on the Brown Note and trying to get through Sunday by doing some music reviews and one political piece, which is going to be difficult because I was up at nearly 4 o'clock, 4 a.m. because of the penalty shootout against Switzerland, which was victorious, but it's been a long day already and it's only like 1 in the afternoon. A review of the latest album by UK electronic music producer Darren Cunningham, who records mostly under the name Actress, and on my radio show I've featured the last few albums of his, with particular Karma and Desire and AZD were particular highlights from me from 2017, and I'm just looking at the track list to see which one. I think it was Karma and Desire maybe was my favourite in 2020. I can't remember which one. Or was it RIP? But anyway, his style is very smoky, dubby, intense, avant, not club oriented at all. Very sort of, very dense music. And that's what the highlights so far have been for me. His latest album, Statik, has come out, and it's something that I thought I was going to say was in the same ballpark as the Four Tet album. I love Four Tet, and I trashed his latest album because it was just like, we've heard so much from Four Tet to have something so insipid. And Ordinary was, I just didn't care. I was just like, and I thought this was going to go the same way with Statik, but it didn't in the end. Even though I would have preferred this album to have been in that much more emotionally intense, much denser soundstage of his previous work, it did get over the line for me. The opener, Hell, it's got very sort of spectral piano. It almost gave me a vibe of Brian Eno's Music for Airports, which isn't. It's fairly representative of the album. It's quite still minimalist, backgroundy for a lot of it. Almost like sort of like in the modern era, the sort of burial ambient stuff, sort of like barely there music, but with sort of faint glitches on the percussive side. Same with the second track, which is only a brief ephemeral track called Statik, the title track. Very dense fog, but not like his previous work where it's actually sort of had sort of like a gut punch. It's like, you know, mist, sort of Twin Peaksy sort of mists going on. The My Ways track 3, again, it's a really quiet opening half of the album. The track for Rain Lines actually has some form of rhythm to it, and a big reference point is Lifestyles of the Laptop Cafe. Is that the right album? A fantastic album, one of the best electronic music albums of all time, from around 2000 or late 90s. I think that's the right, Lifestyles of the Laptop Cafe, something like that. But one of my favourite electronic albums. It's got this really sort of gentle vibe to it, and so does this. The whole album sort of has that, and Rain Lines track 4 has that pleasant, easy listening without that being a reductive or negative term. Ray, track 5, Whirring. There's a continual reference to sort of sci-fi soundtrack where something's moving through an environment throughout this album. And even sort of, if you've ever wanted to dip your toe into ambient techno, the self-titled Voices from the Lake album is the absolute pinnacle of that, in my opinion, and this almost goes down to that sort of very tranquil level. The inventively titled track 6, called 6, does actually start to get some more intensity and darkness to it, and so does track 7, the wonderfully named Cafe Del Mars, which I thought was quite funny. Most interesting track, and it's not just a build like much of the album where they establish sonic elements and add them, but it moves through phases. It's got some gorgeous sort of phasing on the percussion throughout, really strong track, and the more awake sort of vibe to the album continues with Dolphin Spray after that, with a little bit more Ultegra vibe maybe, and some sub bass going on, and it sort of slides back in, and that's probably a good 12-minute period where it sort of lifts up and then slides slightly back down with system verse, a bit more ambient, and going back into the sort of sci-fi soundtrack, moving through travelling vibe of the rest of the album, and a very sort of womb-like come down with the final track, Mellow Checks. Very colourful synths compared to the rest of the album. It's honestly more than the sum of its parts. I actually thought I was going to not give it a good review because of the same way that Four Tet album seemed like a collection of individual tracks that were quite timid and, compared to the rest of Four Tet's discography, the least interesting music. But this really is the sum of its parts. It actually feels like going on a journey, and it kind of rises up and plateaus and comes down the other side. It's much more interesting to listen to than to talk about or think about. So I'm going to give whatever it's called, Statik, the latest album by Actress. I much prefer the last few proper studio albums by Actress. I like him when he gets really sort of dense and foggy and moody, and you can feel it a lot more than this sort of more timid sort of music, but it's still an excellent album, nearly. So I'm going to give Statik by Actress an 8 out of 10.